Hi, Tina. Welcome onto Searching for Mana.
Hi, Lloyd. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Fuller introduction. Tina Baker Taylor is the relatively recent UK director at Binance.
Yeah.
Also, additionally, looking to lead expansion across Europe for the cryptocurrency exchange. We're going to go into Tina's bio. She's worked at a number of the large banks such as HSBC, Citi, RBS, and we'll go into why she decided to, a couple of years ago, join the cryptocurrency blockchain space, get up to speed and understand what's going on in the business and all the things that obviously are exciting her about the business and the future prospects. Before we do that, Tina, perhaps you could be so kind to give us an introduction personally about you and Binance and the role you've taken there right now.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me. I really appreciate the invite, and it's great to be with you. So, as you mentioned, I lead Binance's presence in the UK, which includes our government relations and regulatory affairs across Europe as well. I, in general, oversee our UK marketing strategy, new business opportunities, and partnerships and marketing. So, really, kind of the full breadth of the business here. I'm also responsible for the build and operations of our newly announced UK exchange, Binance UK, which will be launched later this summer. And I guess a little bit about my background. You mentioned, yes, I have worked for a string of banks. So I have a traditional finance background, specifically in payments and capital markets. And I've moved into the fintech and innovation space really over time within the banking ecosystem. I learned about Bitcoin in probably 2012. And I thought it was fascinating, but I also thought it was a bit weird. And I didn't necessarily kind of get my head around it fully back then. So, whilst I was working on a number of kind of blockchain pilot projects within banks, I became increasingly more aware of crypto, and things started to fall into place. And many of the projects that I was working on in the bank, they just seemed like they were so far in the future, and it was difficult to see how I was going to be a part of actually making these things come into fruition. They were kind of longer term projects, and so I was becoming increasingly more interested in crypto overall. Use case was a little bit more immediate, shall we say. So I kind of became that woman who, started talking about Bitcoin. And I was that woman in a very traditional bank. And so you can imagine that was a bit awkward.
And Tina, you were in the last role you had in a corporate, the global head of something like client strategy, global liquidity, and cash management, right? So it's this is a big role. You've got a big vantage point
Yes.
of a huge player like HSBC. So it's a big decision, however compelling it is to want to go to a smaller business where you have more of a direct impact. There must have been a lot of personal considerations there to take that leap of faith.
Yeah, definitely. So I think at the bank, I did have a very senior job. Lots of people, in my team. I had a big global team of people, so responsible for a lot of people's development. And I was working on big cross bank initiatives with some of our most prominent global clients.
Yep.
So yeah, I had worked a long time, obviously, to achieve that. And that was the goal. And I think for me, when I got to where I thought I was going. Like, I had this plan for myself, and I got there, and I realized I wasn't quite sure why I wanted to do that in the first place.
Ah, that's interesting. So when when had your previous self set that plan? Can you go back to that? Can you remember when you
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was probably a 10-year plan,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And I remember the discussions. There's cycles, promotion cycles within the bank, and somebody sat me down and said, you are you're in the consideration for managing director next year, or in the next cycle. I think it was like 6 months out, and there's a number of boxes that you need to tick as part of kind of the political process. So if you're familiar with banking, there are committees that kind of like vote you in, decide that you're going to get promoted into that space, especially if it's an in position promotion. And so it was, building your constituency, and getting advocates on board for you, and getting involved in lots of other projects that are kind of side of the desk projects. And I was already doing a lot of those, right? So I was already pretty active outside of my day to day role. And I kind of looked at all of these, suggestions for how to best position myself. And it just felt really political, and it didn't necessarily feel like a reflection of the work I was doing, but yet was going to be assessed on, kind of these political triggers. And I just thought, well, I don't know that I want to do that. Not that I didn't want to do the things that were being asked of me, but I didn't necessarily want to position myself for, the next big promotion, and it was going to require me to potentially do all of this extra kind of political stuff that didn't necessarily seem really value additive for my day to day job. I didn't see how it was kind of adding value to my team or to the bank. I think that what I discovered was what I personally enjoy more is being able to kind of deliver the thing that has this tangible output, that that isn't necessarily just based around the strategy. So I think I felt like I needed a little bit more of a balance between the execution and the strategy. Just working on the strategy alone wasn't necessarily kind of filling the desire I had to build something.
Right. And you in 2018 leave HSBC, and you don't join Binance until much more recently. What was it you left to do in the first instance, Teana?
So I did leave to join a cryptocurrency trading platform,
Yeah.
much smaller than Binance, and local in the UK. And so there, I was able to, really get my hands dirty in the crypto space and get a lot of experience really quickly in quite a small company. And launch a couple of new to market products. That was really cool. And really do some impactful work on the policy space. And that was really fascinating. I learned a lot. And felt like it was meaningful. I felt really proud of that work. Unfortunately, that business was impacted pretty significantly by what we in the industry call crypto winter. So crypto prices, dove. And if you were a crypto firm that was holding quite a lot of crypto assets, on your P&L, then obviously the value of your company was affected. And this was a smaller company, and it took a hit. So I had to leave that business. But I knew that I really loved what I was doing. And so I then took the decision to really focus on the policy piece that I was working on, and help to establish a global regulatory advocacy organization working with crypto asset participants themselves, as well as regulators and standard setters, to start to articulate what best practices might look like, how we could harmonize regulation across different jurisdictions, and kind of those big enablement policy uh, initiatives that I felt like was really going to push the industry forward. Um,
And
yeah,
you're still involved with that work.
I am. Yes.
Yeah.
So I am on the board of another organization called Blockchain for Europe, which does quite a lot of policy advocacy work at the EU level.
Fantastic. And then you take the role at Binance, which we have briefly introduced. So for anybody who's listened to season 1 of the podcast, which I'm sure is all of you, I have had a couple of exchange company kind of MDs onto the business. I think what would be interesting is, if we can almost go to the next level of not explaining what it is, but perhaps what the differentiators are. So we had Gemini. So we had Julian Sawyer onto the show. Yeah. Awesome episode. And he kindly took us through, the rudimentary reason that it exists, and then what he was excited about innovatively that they were looking at moving forward, perhaps using them as a comparison and others. If you could explain what the Binance proposition is.
Sure. So Binance's mission is to really provide access to crypto asset and blockchain technology globally. We are focused on building the infrastructure to make the evolution of money accessible to everyone. We are very customer-centric in our approach. I think that's one of the major differentiators about Binance. So if you've heard CZ talk about our strategic approach to product development, for example, one of the things that he says over and over is that things get developed within Binance. Products and features are built because users ask for them. So we take our kind of community engagement really seriously, and our users are really driving our strategic roadmap. And I think that's pretty interesting. I don't know a lot of businesses that are that, a lot of people talk about being customer centric, and we really kind of demonstrate that every single day.
So if we go back, just a few years ago when CZ was, on the front page of Forbes or whatever it might be, and in 7 months, I think Binance had just got to the point where they were fit for 1 million transactions. Mm-hmm. Something crazy every, I'm going to get this wrong, minute, second, I don't know, but it was definitely way quicker than anybody else could do it. Yeah. So it kind of, when I was reading, I was like, obviously relatively fascinated with how's he done this, but also just, what's different? Why has this happened? And it seemed like there was very good tech. The focus had been on speed, and that was what won the day in the early stage. And then, of course, I'm sure, the business has brought really experienced individuals like you to the mission and maturing the proposition. So the difference between then and now will be stark. But could you give us some type of idea of scale and scope that Binance is operating on today?
Sure. So Binance is a global exchange. We usually, depending on any given Sunday, are the number 1 crypto asset trading platform in the world by users and volume. The .com platform offers a wide plethora of features and services, really across the entire kind of crypto asset portfolio. So we offer staking services, we offer saving services. We obviously offer, trading services as well. But Binance as a company also continues to invest in building the ecosystem. And I think that's, really another major differentiator. So,
Yeah.
we have a Launchpad division of the company that helps token projects not just, take their token live, but really the full scope of how they're coming to the market with of the business that the token supports. We have the Binance Charitable Foundation, which has a completely separate mission to bring the freedom of money to the lowest 1 billion around the world, and that arm of the company undertakes charitable initiatives literally all over the place. At the moment, we're doing a lot of crypto for COVID donations to different countries that are struggling predominantly with PPE donations. So I think when I look at the portfolio of, it's not just the features that we offer on our platform. We really are developing an ecosystem, or we're helping to serve the ecosystem, so that crypto assets and tokenization can grow.
I read on the top of your profile, and I'll read it so I don't get it wrong. We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are, which I believe is your own personal quote that you've decided to put onto.
But yes, it's a quote. It's not my quote, but yeah,
a quote that you selected to kind of represent your philosophy. So that would obviously suggest that perhaps they are actually genuinely true to that mentality of somebody like you who's been attracted to the business to come in. And as you say, there's one element which is the technical, strategic, commercial view, and then there's another softer, subtler element which over time, if it's got right and it's not lip service, will obviously mean that you build a trusted community, which I think, given the philosophy that you guys have, is crucial. So that will probably become one of the most important aspects to the success of the business.
Sure. I think being able to deliver on your promise, whatever that promise is, that business promise that you set out, is important for any success of any company. I think in the crypto space, we're still really at the genesis of this journey. It's been 10 years since Bitcoin, came onto the scene, but really in the last 2 or 3 years, we've started to see how, tokenization will evolve over time. And I think that it's really important now to be delivering on that promise, and whatever that is. So, different companies do different things. Even within the crypto asset trading platform segment of crypto, everybody has a different approach and everybody has a different mission that they're trying to achieve. We are very committed to ensuring that our users, have the best features and services, but equally that we are enabling the community to build. And that we're enabling, sustainable growth of the, token ecosystem and all of the enablement and infrastructure that goes along with that. So yeah, I think that there is a real authenticity behind what we're trying to do. And I was attracted to the business because I do see Binance actually delivering on that customer promise every day.
The second part of what I was coming on to say that you can definitely give me your opinion and correct me on was, I suppose, alluding to, from my reasoning, lack of enthusiasm for the user case for altcoins. Mm-hmm. How are you seeing that on the exchange in terms of, it doesn't feel like, for sure there's as many ICOs and people raising money through that method. But like you say, we are at the genesis of this thing. That doesn't mean it's not going to happen, but it seems to have slowed down. How's that altcoin market going?
Well, so the term altcoin really just kind of means anything that isn't Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so within
Can I say the smaller ones then? So the ones not in the top 50.
Okay, so you're talking about anything outside the top 50. Okay, because there are some people that would consider XRP or Litecoin an altcoin, and they are in the top 10, right?
Yeah.
So if you're talking about some of those smaller projects, ultimately the purpose of bringing a token to market is well, not ultimately. I mean, there's a couple different reasons. So one of those reasons, as you've alluded to, is to raise capital.
Yep.
You fund the project that you're trying to build, right? The other reason could be it is a form of gas. So the petrol, the battery power that fuels something else that you're trying to do. So, for example, ETH is designed to be able to fuel smart contracts and other activities that happen on a blockchain. There are some tokens that are designed specifically for dApps, for decentralized apps, or tokens that are designed for gaming.
Yeah.
So there's different reasons for bringing these tokens to market. Now, I think what you're asking about is the trading on a secondary market of said token.
Yes, that's right. And I think a good example here, if we go back up that list, would be Ripple and XRP.
No, well, I don't know. So XRP, as I understand it, I don't work for Ripple, obviously, is a very specific use case to enable cross-border payments or financial institution to financial institution settlement. So it's kind of like the CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies that we're talking about today, and it's a liquidity management tool. So that's the use case for XRP. So then on a secondary market, you have trading of that asset, like you would in any other type of company. So you have Apple, and Apple has shares, and so your belief in the Apple product, we're not trading iPads or AirPods or whatever. That's the product.
Yeah.
So similar to XRP or the Ripple infrastructure, the Ripple network, you are buying any token, whether it's XRP or Litecoin or EOS, because you fundamentally believe in the thing that the company's trying to build.
Yep. And how are you seeing that on your exchange at the moment from a macro view? More trading? Volumes overall going up?
Well, I think volumes in the crypto asset market are going up. They're consistently growing, yes, as more people get involved. I don't necessarily have a view on the altcoin market versus the non-altcoin market. I'm completely agnostic from my perspective around. I don't have an ideological attachment to one camp of crypto, but I think that overall the market continues to grow. We can't confuse price volatility with volume and participation. So we're seeing participation rise. For example, the FCA published earlier this week a study or a survey a year on from the first time they conducted the survey around crypto awareness and ownership, essentially. So they were trying to take a look at adoption. And by their estimation, there's somewhere around 1.1 million new crypto owners in the UK. There's 1.1 million people that have participated in crypto over the last year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big number. That's like a 70th.
It is a big number. And also, there was an increase in, something around 3.5% of the entire population of the UK that has now heard of or is aware of crypto assets.
Hmm.
So, the numbers are going up.
Yeah.
But, people always they need to apply context to things. And so people like to equate one thing with another thing to apply some context. And I think at the moment, crypto is still often applied contextually to fiat markets. So overall, the crypto market is still considerably smaller than the equities market or the commodities market, but it does continue to grow.
So if we forget, the pace that this does accelerate, and I don't know what the amount of years is, but 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, but how you see it as a vision that you'd like to get it to, really understanding the benefit of it moving to digital assets. Paint that picture for us. How do you think it looks? Do we not have any, we don't have any fiat currency anymore? How are people exchanging value? How do you see it?
I am not one of those people that think that crypto assets should, so again, attaching a value, replace centralized fiat money. For me, I think crypto and tokenization in general offers an alternative. It offers more choices. So from a wealth creation standpoint, we have the ability now to fractionalize investing in a way that allows people who have potentially smaller amounts of money, but they can participate in investing in wealth creation.
Yeah.
And start to take a little bit more sovereignty over their own kind of wealth position. I think that's really exciting.
Yep.
I think one of the huge promises of crypto, well, not just crypto, but tokens in general. And we're starting to see central banks even kind of look at how they can make things faster, cheaper, and more transparent. I think that this could be a real game changer for a number of financial inclusion initiatives that have struggled over time. And we had the mobile money movement where people were moving money around on from phone to phone. And that helped get people that live in far-flung places or that don't have the same access to traditional financial services, more inclusivity in the financial services system. Crypto can potentially solve a lot of that. The transmission of value, it's very expensive to send money cross border. And so for those people that maybe work away from home and send money back to their families, crypto can be an excellent way for them to move their money around in a cheaper, faster way. But we're also seeing a lot of monetary instability, and things like the coronavirus COVID-19 crisis show us that when an economy starts to creak under the weight of relief packages, or airlines stop flying, and we're going to need planes a year from now, and so how do we keep those companies afloat? Well, we need to pump them full of cash, which means that the cash coffers in a government go down. It's a delicate balance, financial stability. And so in countries where that was already challenged, crypto provides a completely separate way to transact and to pay your bills. So I think that there are a lot of potential use cases, and there are use cases today that maybe aren't talked about or aren't as prolific as we'd like to see. But my argument to that is we have to start somewhere. And this is still very new. And people will ask me, about, secondary trading, one of the things you were alluding to. Isn't this just about, creating, volatile markets so that people can get rich quick? No, I don't. I don't think that that is overall what the whole, digital asset community is trying to do. I do think that you need volume to be able to start to create value. And we're at that volume building place, where we get big enough so that we can start investing in the creation of the value more broadly, across the ecosystem.
I think it was quoted that CZ spends, 25% of his time on, I think Twitter specifically, but definitely social media, which I'm assuming is because partly he wants to see what's going on with people talking about the company and coins in the space, and perhaps he just likes using social media, as many very powerful people do these days. But I think that also, that direct narrative with somebody who's running a business at this type of scale is quite new, isn't it? This isn't just in this just isn't in the crypto space, but particularly in the crypto space, we've had a lot of people who have kind of drummed up their stock because previously you could do that. Slightly different for an exchange, of course. But, it's interesting, isn't it? Is that a strategically important thing for him to do? Him being on social media is adding value to the business. That's just his personality. He's obviously an incredibly clever guy, but that must be, for him to designate that amount of time, from his perspective, important to do. Is that something that runs across the business? Is that in the culture?
Well, you'd have to ask CZ. I do think that the article that you're referring to, he did explain why he spends the time that he spends on social media. So, I'll let your listeners look up that article and get it straight from the source. I'm not going to speak for CZ. I if you're asking, is there inherent value in being a member of the crypto asset community that is approachable, available to listen, jump in and solve customer problems? I know I do all of those things. I have seen CZ do all of those things, and I think that the availability of some of these communication tools allow us to be a little bit more accessible, more able to proactively jump in and solve a problem if it's something that we can do. And I think that across our business, going back to what I said again about the users, we take our user feedback really seriously. And we are very invested in not just our community, although our community is very important to us, but in the growth of the crypto asset community overall. So I think if you're a participant in a ecosystem, especially one that is new and nascent, and we see this across, lots of different sectors. So, identity has a very active, community, people that are focused on machine learning and AI. Anytime you've got kind of a new tech or new type of service, you get a whole community to kind of rally around it, and that's how things grow. So I think that certainly as a leader of a business and as a participant in that community yourself, it is important to be present within it.
We use a lot of tests in our headhunting business, personality profiles, and kind of fluid intelligence tests, reasoning. It depends on what the type of search is, what we want to know. You can't get these things right or wrong. It just shows you differences, which means that you might be able to align a better fit culturally. And what you can see is what somebody perceives themselves as, what somebody's work mask per se is, and then also how somebody behaves under pressure, which are three very interesting different categories to look through a lens. And what's interesting on the point you just make is that I think that work mask has to start going across the whole of social media, because as we would all know and read, if you put the wrong type of stuff out there, it can really affect your success in your career or your ability to land a job. And I think that that's a shame. It's a little bit like, very topically, we're in 1st of July, 2020, COVID. And, there's a big move to working remotely, which absolutely works for some people and cultures and not for others. And my view is that balance is a good option. But again, what's for some people happening is you just have to be switched on the whole time, because, the spotlight, so to speak, is always on you, and it can get incredibly intense. And less you can get these pockets of space where you can take that work mask off. The advice I give to people is that, and this I think is advice that I've taken from just a bunch of people who I think have got it right, is that you should really try and find the work where there is no mask, right? So if
just gonna say that
if so you're not accruing any debt of what your personality is not naturally like, is the luxurious position to put yourself in. So I'm sure CZ, and I don't want to just keep talking about him, by the way, but he's quite a prominent figure in the space. He's just probably being himself, and that's cool, because you can see what the culture of the business is and what his views are, and it's a really enjoyable experience for him. Hopefully, he doesn't have to put a work mask on. But at some point, if you're not in the position of power, then it can be quite tiring if suddenly what used to be your Facebook, where you could have put some pictures of you and your family or friends on, and it was a private zone, just isn't anymore. And that's what I think needs to be thought through. But probably actually we're accountable for ourselves. And so Twitter's a really interesting one, isn't it? It seems like, when the president's running his office through it, and obviously he's a very interesting president. I'm not sure that it's the best option, but they're just my rambling thoughts on it.
Well, I had a leadership coach a number of years ago. I had received some feedback, and it didn't resonate with me. I was really at a loss. And I've been working with this coach for a while, probably 6 months. So,
Cool.
they knew me quite well.
Yep.
And they said, look, you've got 3 choices. I can teach you how to be the person that they are saying they want you to be. It'll be hard. It'll take a lot of effort on your part. It can be done, but I question whether or not you're going to feel like your authentic self. Number 2, I can teach you how to act like the person that they want you to be. But again, you're probably not going to feel like your authentic self. Number 3, you can just accept that this isn't your tribe and move on. And I remember thinking, and I went home and I thought about it, and I thought, the whole idea of being your authentic self is really important to me personally, right? We all kind of have our bottom lines. And that is a real mainstay, I think, of my particular personality. I like to, deliver what it says on the tin, right? Um, and I think that if I were to be in another situation where I felt like I couldn't be my authentic self, for fear of repercussion, then I would question whether or not I'm doing the right thing or saying the right thing, or if I'm just no longer surrounded by my tribe. So I don't feel like I have to censor what I say on social media, um, because I feel quite confident that I'm going to say something that I believe to be true or that I believe in, and that within my tribe, people expect that we're going to be authentic. So I feel like if I had to go back to that place where maybe I didn't necessarily always feel like I was showing up to be my authentic self, I don't know that I'd be able to do that again.
Do you think that's with everything that's happened over the last few months and companies at large having to digitalize and so on and so forth, do you think that's getting better? Do you think this is an inflection point for when people can take off that work mask and be themselves more?
Well, I think what I've really noticed is, and you hear stories about it on the news. I've experienced it myself. We're in each other's homes now. So previously, I might have been sitting in my office and we're having this conversation, or on conference calls. They would be meetings, and again, you would be sitting in my office or your office. But for the last 4 months, we have been joining each other in each other's homes, and I think that has really humanized all of us. So people have young children, their parents, and kids come in. Like that famous guy on BBC, which I still think is one of the funniest things ever. And sometimes I watch it just for fun, but you can see the panic and the horror, of, oh my God, she's just walked in there and the wife is, climbing back out. Oh my God, and he's like acting like it's not happening. And today, I mean, people have kids. Sometimes kids come into the room as I'm talking to you now. And, it's funny because a few minutes ago I was thinking, oh my gosh, the sound is going to pick this up. But, I have a little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel snoring away loud. I'm sure you can hear it. So, but we're human, and we hopefully are doing work that we love and we're fulfilled by and inspired by. But we also have lives and families, and that's part of what makes us a whole person. So I do think that we've kind of humanized the workplace a little bit over the last couple of months. At least I hope we have.
Sounds like it was great for you to get that advice from the career coach. Have you used career coaches periodically or psychologists? Was that the first time that you did that? And it sounds like you're really grateful you did.
Yeah. So, one of the things that comes up a lot, I think, is, the diversity topic, and how do women get in senior positions, and how do
Yeah.
you get on boards, and, how do you get seen? And I've always worked, the majority of my career in, traditionally male dominated, um, sectors.
Hmm.
So, and crypto is no different. And I've been asked a lot, how do you do that, and how have you been successful in that, and how have you kind of overcome all of these challenges? And I don't mean to imply that the challenges aren't there and they're not real and they're not experienced. They are. I think maybe I was a bit desensitized to them. I have four brothers. I have no sisters. I kind of grew up in a very male household. So I think some of that is just my own personal desensitization. But one of the things that, very early on, because I had some wonderful, bosses and mentors, is that, you need to be open to feedback. Um, even if it's constructive or, potentially critical, there's something to be learned from it. And if you can back up from it a little bit and maybe receive the feedback out here so it doesn't hit you so hard, then you have time to assess it and, see if it's relevant to you, and then you can do something about it. But if you can't receive feedback, or you're so impacted by it that you can't take action on it, then you're going to be slower to grow. So I actively sought mentors early in my career, and people ask me all the time, well, how do you get a mentor? How do you get somebody to mentor you? And, is there formal programs? And there are formal programs, and a lot of companies offer those internally. And, there's other kind of industry type programs. I'm a mentor for She 256. But really the best way is to identify somebody that you work with, or that or that's in your industry, that you feel attracted to, you're drawn to. There's things about them that you'd like to emulate. And it's a two-way street, right? So I think a lot of people, it's like, can we sit down and have a coffee? Can I pick your brain? What can you tell me about your career that I can learn from? That's very one-way traffic, right? And it means I'm like giving you something. So, how do you make that reciprocal? And so the advice that I give to people is, figure out a way how you can add value for that person. And sometimes that is, taking on a project that might be outside of your scope, or, getting involved in a volunteer capacity to help somebody do something. But you're demonstrating why this person wants to give up their time to invest in you. And it's reciprocal.
Teana, that's great advice. How did you work that out? Do you think that you had, firstly, you might just be very thoughtful and you sat down and worked it out, which then I assume is because you're highly motivated. Or do you think it came from watching other people do that? Did somebody explain that was a good thing to do? Were some of your brothers older and successful in work? Was it family attitude? Where did this thoughtful philosophy for advancing your career come from?
Gosh, Lloyd, that's a really good question. I don't know. I don't think anybody told me, and certainly not at work. That didn't happen. I think maybe it's probably my parents. So my dad has these little sayings that stick with me. I actually was speaking to him yesterday, and I said that he had said something to me, I don't know, 20 years ago. And I told him, I still think this all the time, and it made him laugh. My dad, I used to wonder why my dad had so many friends, right? My dad is the kind of guy that'll talk to anyone, and anybody will talk to him, and people are quite drawn to him. He has a warmth that he kind of emotes. And I remember being very little and saying, why do you have so many friends, Daddy? And he said, because I always ask people how I can help, and I mean it. And that stuck with me. Oh gosh, I'm getting a little emotional. And so one of the things that I have tried to do, and one of the things I try and instill in my team, is try and end, a conversation, or start a conversation with, how can I help? And mean it. Actually mean it. And so I think that whole concept of being of service is maybe where it stems from. But I feel like if I'm going to ask you for something, there should be something in it for both of us. And if there is something in it for both of us, then I'm actually probably going to get more value from you if you feel like you're getting value from me. But I don't know. I don't know where that comes from, actually.
That's fantastic saying that he has. It's much like there's a book by Carnegie that's very famous. I'll post it in the link, which has a similar-ish philosophy. But more on your father. Was he an entrepreneur?
No, he's not.
He was. What did he do? if you don't mind me asking?
No, not at all. He was a locomotive engineer for the railroad. So he drove trains.
Wow.
Yeah.
Super cool. I always like to ask just a few questions so that we can kind of form a view of all the guests as we work through the episodes. Is there anything particular that you attribute to your, what is now success in work with your routines or how you operate through a day?
I am insatiably curious. I ask a lot of questions. And I think that curiosity has put me into projects or into relationships or into companies or into industries like crypto, that had I not been so curious, maybe I wouldn't have explored. So, my natural curiosity has probably opened up a lot of opportunity for me. But also that curiosity and that constant questioning, I think, is part of my real need to understand something. So I think it can be also quite annoying. I'd probably put that in my personality defect camp as well, because I can ask a lot of questions because I really want to understand something inside and out. If I'm interested in it, I'll be very curious.
Teana, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. So interesting. Is there something you'd like to leave the audience with to think about, or just something that you wanted to discuss?
No, I don't. Well, I will give you one kind of last top tip, I guess, from me. We were talking about mentors, and I think there's a big difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And so, I think your question to me was, if you could, how do you attribute, your success? And what role did coaches play in that? So a professional coach, if they're good, can help you really focus on achieving specific objectives. Coaching isn't fun. It's work, and it can be hard and requires a real personal investment of your energy if you want it to be successful. Your coach should probably not be your friend. They're not your therapist. They're there to help you achieve specific either upskilling or soft skills or whatever you're trying to achieve. But a sponsor, I think for me, going back to what I attribute my success to, there are definitely some key critical people in my life and over my career that really acted as a sponsor for me. And that is different than a mentor, where it's kind of a coaching relationship, but a sponsor is really somebody whose trust that you've gained, usually by execution and the commitment to the work that you're doing, that and that someone senior to you that takes a vested interest in your career and actually pushes you up. And you earn that. You earn somebody's commitment to be able to kind of push your career forward. So I would say if you're finding yourself at that spot where you feel like you're almost quite there and you just need that extra push, that's probably real. You probably do need some help and support, but again, that's a two-way street, and there needs to be something in it for the sponsor. It's different than favoritism. It's different than nepotism. It really is. I seek out your support. I'm willing to give you this to get your support, and in exchange, I'd really like you to help me by using your professional and personal capital to kind of push me up to the next level. And that has been absolutely critical in my career development.
Yeah, and I just want to say that if you don't, because it can be hard to believe that those people are out there who will give that sponsorship, they are. There is absolutely
ask, and I think this is the thing.
yeah.
And I think especially, this is one of the things that I say to especially young girls that ask for, my top tips. You need to ask a sponsor. And I remember, one relationship so poignantly. I remember the moment. I remember where we were. I remember exactly what we were doing. And this person said, what do you want from me? How can I help you? And it was very directly asked. And I thought, okay, well, this is the moment I need to ask. And I said, I would like this, this, and this. And she said, what are you willing to give up to get that? What are we bartering with? And I said, well, I think I can do this, this, and this. And she said, deal. Now that's a deal, right? We've made a pact. We have a deal with each other. So I have to hold up my end of the bargain. And it sounds a little transactional, but it wasn't. There was definitely something in it for both of us. But you have to position yourself to be in that sphere of being visible to those people. So, that's kind of where the mentorship comes in. And then, the sponsorship is a direct ask, and you have to be willing to give up or give something to get it.
Teana, it sounds like you're giving absolutely brilliant advice out. Is there a place or a forum where obviously we could alert the audience to perhaps visit if they wanted to ask you directly, these questions?
Sure. Well, my DMs are always open on Twitter, and I'm at Teana Taylor. My messages are open on LinkedIn as well, so you can send me a LinkedIn message. But there's one caveat. I get many messages, and I have many, professional colleagues and friends that get the same messages. Please don't send me a message saying, I heard you on this podcast and you had such great advice and I'd love to sit down and have a coffee. That tells me nothing. That does not tell me how I can help you or what your goals are. So I'm definitely more apt to respond to a message that says, I would like to develop this particular skill, or I would like to get to this next place in my career. Give me a little bit of detail around exactly what you're trying to achieve. And then, potentially I may have some advice for you. I may have someone that I can introduce you to help, broaden your network. It's not just me, obviously, that has some interesting top tips if you think that they are, Lloyd. But if you're asking for help, you need to be specific about what you want. And so in the past, when people have asked me, to mentor them or, to help them with their career, I have always said, okay, go away and spend some time thinking about the 3 things that you'd like to achieve and the 6 ways that I can help you. And you would be very surprised at how few people actually come back.
Yeah. That's
if you ask for help, you need to be prepared to do the work.
Yeah. And by the way, that advice that you've just given is the type of advice that I would give, or I'm sure lots of people are giving to people in partnership development, business development. We all are managing the most precious of commodity, which is our diary, our time. And it really does pay, doesn't it, to have put some thorough researching, ask the questions, be specific, do it as succinctly as possible, and explain
from that person before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great advice, Teana. Fantastic having you on the show. Thank you so much, and all the best.
Thanks.